What's good, everyone? Michael and Matt here at Summer Game Fest, and we just played Resident Evil Requiem. We don't have too much to show on video for you, but we do want to talk about our gameplay experience. So, Matt, can you walk us through what we played?
Yeah, it was a very scary demo. It was about 30 minutes, and we took control of the new protagonist, Grace Ashcroft, who is a FBI investigator. And obviously, she wakes up in this spooky abandoned hospital where all sorts of gore and gutsy viscera things seem to have happened, but we don't really know the full story. We just know that she wakes up in this abandoned looking hospital. It's very scary, and as she sort of explores these hallways, in the nurses' stations, there's like blood everywhere, but it's also very like Resident Evil-y, so there's like gothic architecture in random places where you don't expect them. Like the doors have like marble statues for, I don't know, it's a very fancy hospital, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 7 in that way. And Resident Evil 8 felt, I don't want to say whimsical, but there was something about that game kind of took the edge off a little bit more. There's a little bit more action, but I think my impression of this gameplay demo is that it kind of reels it back to the feeling of RE7. And the one thing I want to say about Grace Ashcroft as a character is that as I played the demo, I felt her fear as well. And you could hear it in her expressions, in her voice, and the way she moves. Ethan Winters from previous games, I didn't really get a real serious gauge of his personality. But right off the bat with Grace in the opening cutscene that you see, and then even in the trailer, when you see her, like she's an FBI investigator, and like the remnants of her mom she's going to investigate. So she's involved on some level, but one of the things that was mentioned to us is that even though she is an agent, she knows how to handle a gun. This is all unfamiliar territory for her. So getting that sense of fear and some of the jump scares and some of the atmospheric horror elements of this game are also expressed through the character. So I really like that as a touch.
Yeah, it was. So you touched on it a little bit, but in the trailer, she's like introduced, like surrounded by books and her dossiers and things like that, and you can get the sense that she's kind of like a bookworm, and that comes through in the gameplay. Like she is not like a Leon Kennedy where she's like a super agent spy butt kicker, right? Like you can hear her sort of taking like calming breaths, as she like sees like scary hallway, scary things in the hallway, right? She goes like, who, and it gets a real sense of like terror in there, which is really
a lot of dread.
Yeah, a lot of dread.
Yeah, and playing through the demo too, there's the traditional Resident Evil foundation there, where you're investigating the environment, this environmental storytelling and puzzles, and I need to find this item to open this thing, which gets me this other item so I can progress. So it still has that familiar Resident Evil foundation. But even like through that, even though I kind of know what the moment to moment is like for a modern Resident Evil game, there's still creative ways in which they kind of keep you on your toes. And although like there isn't much we can show, there is another monster that will be chasing me around in this game, in the same vein as a Mr. X or a Nemesis or a Lady Dimitrescu. Like there's still that there as well. But the hard part in talking about is because we don't have a lot of context. Like you said, we jump into the demo without much story with that. But you still get a sense of what's going on by investigating like notes laid on tables and looking at some of the things that are on the floor in and around the environment. And once you get out of once you start the demo, there's like a note where it's like taking like a timetable like at 14 minutes her blood like was changing, but then she started going hail or whatever. So I'm guessing that something's going on with Grace, and I'm expecting to see her evolve as a character, with her being like, I suppose she's being the subject of what's going on in Requiem. That's just kind of speculation, but that's kind of like the fun part of games like Resident Evil, where you inspect the environment and you kind of like come up with your idea of where this game is going. So that's kind of what I'm looking at.
No, yeah, she's a new character, and we don't know too much about her yet, right? But we do know that she has ties to her mom, who is in Resident Evil Outbreak, and so there's like a legacy element there. But yeah, as far as characters go, like this is a new entry into the Resident Evil canon for us, and so I'm really excited to find out more about her, find out more about her backstory, find out like how she connects to the overall umbrella conspiracy of it all. I think, should we talk about the sort of question that I'm sure everybody has about this game, where is it first person or is it third person? And the answer is it's both.
Yeah, it's both. So the way it works is that In the menu, you could choose first person or third person, and Capcom's been testing this out with like the Resident Evil Village DLC, so it's not unfamiliar. No, obviously the RE remakes that we've gotten in the past are all third person, but with this one, it's that slower paced RE7, RE8 formula, but with that third person mode, it does change the experience quite and like that's not surprising, but actually jumping between those, it's like, oh, okay, when I'm sneaking around trying to get around this monster that's chasing me, third person is like super useful. And making sure I'm sneaking around, peeping around corners, I don't have to like expose myself in that sense. But when I'm looking at things in the environment, I like going back to first person. Yeah. So, the thing that I'm hung up on is that switching between them has to be done through the menu. And do wish there was a way to like click a stick and then it'll change view. I know there's technical limitations to what you could do with that in that regard, but at least you do have the option for this one. So, first person mode, maybe get motion sick a little bit. That is definitely a thing that can happen. So you can kick it to third person and it'll be fine. But either way, yeah, I think it's still a pretty eerie experience. It's a very dreadful experience.
No, you touched on it, right? Like I think there's like it's interesting, right? Because there's they talked about how this is going to be survival horror at its core, and that's going to be a very scary and spooky game like the last couple of games. But there's going to be a little more actiony, and I feel like that comes through with the perspective shift. In first person, it is full throttle. It is so scary in first person, especially when the giant monster is chasing you, right? But in third person, you get a little like new element of like stealth action, coming in, and that is introduced just by perspective change. And I like how like it, regardless of which perspective you choose, like it's detailed in both ways, right? Like the character animations in third person perspective, it looks really cool and really fluid. But in first person, you get the upfront or the in your face, like action of it all. And so it's a really cool way to play the game, and especially like swapping back and forth, you get two different flavors of the game while playing the same demo. But you're right, I do wish there was like a sort of like seamless way that you can change between the two, like in Fallout. Sure, yeah. But for now though, I just really appreciate that you are able to get both, and regardless of how you prefer your Resident Evil, whether you're a first person enjoyer or a third person enjoyer, you get a really good version of both.
Yeah. I guess the last thing that I'm thinking of is how this is going to fit into the rest of the Resident Evil lore, what story they're trying to tell. Of course, you mentioned Grace's mom is a character from Resident Evil Outbreak, and what's the connection there, of course, is what we're wondering. And also, this is ostensibly Resident Evil 9. I mean, it's no secret. It's toying with us with like the key art. So Resident Evil Requiem, Resident Evil 9. How this is going to tie back to Village and even 7.
Yeah.
Those things are always some of my favorite elements of the Resident Evil franchise as a whole, is all these different connections there. And I have a sneaking suspicion that, not to say that Village didn't have like an extensive story, but I do think there's a little bit more emphasis, judging from the trailer, and some of like the emphasis on Grace as a character, more so than like Ethan Winters felt like a kind of stand-in.
Yeah.
And like, his story did evolve once it got towards the end of Village, of course. But it feels like right out of the gate, they're really highlighting Grace as a character in this game. So I'm looking forward to how that's going to play out.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Like, I think 7 and 8 in particular with Ethan, it kind of felt like a side adventure. There was like the Umbrella connection, and there was Chris Redfield who appeared in Village, but it really felt like Ethan sort of like went off on his own and had this like, and it like brought in the world of Resident Evil, so to speak. But yeah, with this new game, it's like back, I think it's back in Raccoon City. That's what the trailer seems to imply. We don't know for sure. It seems like there's some like direct connections to the events of Resident Evil 2, and so it kind of feels like you're getting sucked back into the sort of like main storyline.
So those are our impressions of Resident Evil Requiem based on our demo that we played here at Summer Game Fest. If you want more on this game or anything that's been happening in the summer of gaming, stick with IGN.